Hey you, how you doing? My name is Tommy. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down how to use AI as a business owner, aka AI 101. And so the biggest things I'm going to be covering today are primarily the frameworks that I use when I think through helping clients, and some of the things that you should think through as a business owner when it comes to evaluating the different opportunities in your business that you can use AI to actually help with. So who am I? Obviously, my name's Tommy. In terms of my background, I've been in the online high ticket space for almost 4 years at this point. I've sold millions of dollars online when it comes to info products, courses, programs, etc. And I was actually recruited by acquisition.com to work at one of their portfolio companies. And I also worked at one of the biggest and fastest growing AI companies worth over $400 million. And so when it comes to things like AI, scaling, sales, marketing, I'm not going to pretend like I'm like Hermosi, but I definitely know a thing or two. So I'm not a dum-dum, in case you're curious. So in this video, the primary thing that I'm trying to get across is, as a business owner, how do we tackle this like soup, I guess you could say, of what AI is? Because a lot of people approach it from, like, there's a lot of people out there that are basically saying AI can do everything, basically. And then there's also other people being like, oh, AI is just overhyped. Which, I mean, sometimes that's fair. And so it's very hard to kind of understand who you should actually listen to, who is someone that's credible, and who is someone that, you know, I should maybe go to work with if you want to work with them, or listen to and copy when it comes to using their stuff. So by the end of this video, you'll have a lot more clarity on specifically for your business what you need to think about when it comes to AI. So the first place that we'll start is with this mental framework, okay? So the big issue I see a lot of influencers that are talking about AI have is they're like, one, people just like slap AI on the back of whatever program or thing they're trying to sell, and they're like, oh my gosh, it's AI, because they're trying to capitalize on the AI hype. I don't think that's cool. I think you should genuinely have something that is AI related if you're going to say it's AI, or should have a very key component as a part of it. Now, because of that, there's obviously a lot of people talking about it nowadays. So how do you actually use it? Because I talk with quite a few business owners where they're thinking like there's this like AI apocalypse. There's this AI apocalypse that's going on, and AI is going to destroy my business, or I'm going to be eating up my people that are, you know, using AI, which is actually true, But it's not like that big of a deal if you can think through how for your business you can actually use AI, which that's what I'm primarily going to cover. And it all comes back to this main concept. It comes back to problems. Okay. Cool, Tommy. Like, how does that actually make sense? So the biggest thing that I think about is AI is only as good as the problem that it solves. If we use that as kind of like our razor for how we actually distinguish between what's good and what's not, you can actually tell how good somebody is based on how they're talking about the AI that they're using and integrating. As opposed to like, oh, there's this cool picture thing that it makes for me. It's like, okay, but like, what does it actually do for the business? Like, how does it actually like benefit the business overall? Which there's actually 4 areas that it will benefit your business. And I'll go ahead and kind of run you through what those are right now. So one of them is that it increases revenue. So we'll do moolah. So it increases money. It decreases cost for something. So you have the exact same amount of revenue, but because AI eliminates additional complexity, or it streamlines it, so you only have to pay like the API fee to use an AI as opposed to like a human or something like that, it decreases the amount of costs, and that goes straight to your bottom line in terms of profit. So you ultimately can make more money just from that. Or what it does is it does repetitive tasks or grunt work. Grunt work. Freaking A. I can't freaking... we'll do this. Grunt work. Grunt work. Cool. So there's grunt work. And this is typically when you think about like, okay, there just has to be a body in a seat to do the thing. This is something like setting, you know, some people, they still set reminders, or they have someone doing follow-ups to make sure that the people that are a priority in terms of pipeline can ultimately still be closed or be kept in touch with, or can be moved down the sales process. Or it could be like client check-ins. Specifically if you're talking more on the back end, like if you have a program, if you have like an agency, an info product business, something like that. Or hell, you're a professional service person, like being able to make sure you're in touch, getting all the things you need and having the right communication cadence with them. Like the grunt work side of stuff, having somebody else do it, except that somebody else is the AI. So there's that portion of it. So just a body in a seat to do a job. And then the last one, so if we've got increasing revenue in and of itself, decreasing costs, grunt work, the last one we have is really just the speed component of it. So you can do the exact same thing as all these other ones, but it just happens a lot faster. And this is where you would see something along the lines of like an AI SDR. So if you have a normal human SDR, they can do a certain amount of like work or outreach or something like that. An AI SDR, there's really no limit because they don't have to think about sleeping, energy, like there's some other stuff you have to consider, but it just gets the job done faster. And so if you can dial it back to one of those 4 areas, then most of the time you will ultimately be in a good place. Like, how does this directly affect revenue? Or how does it directly decrease cost? How does this actually remove repetitive grunt work that I am paying someone for, like a body in a seat? And this could be like, okay, maybe it is grunt work that's important that you do have to do, but then you're just having the AI do it. You know, it could also just decrease headaches, but that's obviously part of grunt work. I don't like grunt work. I doubt you do too. But so then there's that, and then the last one, of course, is how quickly. How much time are you saving? How quickly is it accelerating things? How quickly are we able to scale, etc.? And with these 4 horsemen, I guess we'll call them, the 4 horsemen of AI productivity, then ultimately you're going to be in a good place. But it has to logically be brought back to one of those things. The only other thing that I can maybe think of, and I'm actually working with a client right now who they actually are an agency, specifically like a lead generation agency, helping their clients when it comes to, I think it's like Facebook ads specifically, but they do some other stuff too. And the problem, again, if we go back to like, what is the problem we're solving? The problem that they're running into is they have one really high paying client. I think they're being paid like $80,000 for the one client per month. And basically, this one client is a smart dude. He's an attorney, and he's like, hey, what is my ROI from X to Y? And he gives a very specific date range. Which the thing is, the agency is not just going to give him access to the Facebook ads thing because it doesn't count in their fee, because they have like a scaling fee. And they still need to present the numbers in terms of, hey, it's ad spend plus my service fee is what you ultimately see is in your cost per case or cost per result, or, you know, cost per acquisition is, you know, another way that you could say it. Being able to actually do that. But the big issue is that whenever that guy, who is their highest paying client, is like, give me the data, it turns into basically this all day event for the entire team where they're climbing through spreadsheets. And so basically what ends up happening is, if we tie it back to here, there's like grunt work specifically doing that, and then they want to make sure they get it to them as soon as possible, so they're like, all hands on deck, we're doing this thing. And so the entire team of like 6 people is now climbing through spreadsheets trying to put pieces together, which is a pain in the ass. Now, a second tier benefit of us helping them kind of aggregate all this data into a single dashboard that I can actually give to the guy so he can just play with it on his own, and then they can obviously see it on their end for all their clients, is they can actually make better decisions as a business. Like, do we want to go from like a retainer or like a scaling retainer model to, hey, maybe we could just do a pay per result model? But the thing is, how can you do that effectively without going bankrupt? You need the data, and you need consistent data to be able to measure that. So there's like a second tier benefit of making a better decision in terms of how you're positioning the business in and of itself, which ultimately makes the business more scalable. So that's more of like a decision making, like second tier benefit of that. But the core comes down to grunt work and speed and being able to maintain revenue, if that makes sense. So that's one example. But again, where do we start? We started with the problem that we're trying to solve. That's where we started. Now, other things you can look at, which are not directly like, let's say, revenue specifically related or cost related, is something like the back end. We're talking like being able to deal with client fulfillment and automate that. So another company that I'm working with right now, they're doing around like I think it's like 3 to 5 mil a year. Basically, they are having issues when it comes to like their backend stuff, when it comes to CSMs, delivery, that type of stuff, because it's like a program, and then people are learning a skill set, and then they're using the skill set to make money. That's basically what it is at a high level. Now, the problem that the CSMs are running into is that there's a lot of like spreadsheet crawling, time, effort, manual reminders to reach out to different students to make sure they're progressing through the steps that they're supposed to. And so they're all supposed to gather a bunch of data, which is kind of hard to do if the students are not doing what they're supposed to do. Which again, if you're not tracking everything, makes it very hard. Okay, how do we fix this? Well, I'll walk you through the thought process that we're going through right now to actually help fix this problem. So the first thing we need to do is, okay, so what the CSMs are doing, what's like the actual human step-by-step process they're doing right now to ultimately deal with this issue? So that's kind of, and I'll use this little diagram here. That's where we start, right? What is the actual underlying system that is currently being used, this underlying process currently being used to solve the problem of getting the data we need and keeping people happy? Okay, what is that? Now, some people, some business owners are like, you know what? I'm going to take this, figure out this system, and I'm going to turn it into an automation. So let the automation handle it, which is fair enough. Sometimes that works. But the issue you can run into with just an automation is that it's a static thing, i.e., once you set it, there really isn't a ton of variables that change unless you use conditional logic, i.e., if a student says X, respond with Y. Some things can do that. If you're very smart and you really think far ahead and you account for every variable, then maybe you could have just a typical automation solve that problem. But most people are not going to be able to have an automation that's up to the level required in order to get high-level results, keep your people happy, reduce the chargeback risk, reduce refund risk, increase the amount of people wanting to upsell because of their experience, increasing NPS score, that type of stuff. Like, that's a very hard thing to just do with just an automation. So then, the beautiful thing about AI, or what I call Tier 1 AI, is we have the automation with like oversight of something like ChatGPT or something like that. So it's like AI oversight. So there's the actual system, and then on top of that, as you can see here, is the AI oversight, right? Now, that actually sometimes can be very good if you obviously set everything up effectively. If you don't, you're kind of in a bad spot. Because AI is not a human and it can't think for itself. It can have like the outcome of kind of what you're looking for, and it can do its best to solve that. But sometimes, I mean, I don't know if you've used ChatGPT before, but it's like you give it a prompt or whatever you're trying to do, and then you give it the exact same prompt a different time, and it gives you a similar-ish answer, but it's not exactly the same. Well, sometimes it's fine. Sometimes it's not fine. And so it kind of depends on, again, the specific problem that we're trying to solve. Now, as kind of like a tier 2 AI, you could have almost like an AI that's doing the oversight, and then on top of that, there's like a manager AI or like an AI team that's making sure that it's covering this guy's butt to make sure it's doing what it's supposed to do, and then this overseeing AI makes sure that obviously everything's running smoothly, which is better. But still on top of that, you're still going to need basically a human to oversee it, and we're talking like, you know, it could be just a person on your team. It could be like a fractional AI consultant, depending on how complex the thing is. But so that's essentially the thing we're doing right now with the other company. And I would show you these or the specific like back end of stuff, but because we're dealing with people's numbers and like Facebook data and like personal information, I can't just like share that everywhere because that'd be bad for me. And obviously they wouldn't appreciate that too much. So, but typically I would try if I was able, and I'll see if, who knows, maybe in the future I can ask them to share some stuff. But so this is the core way that you have to think through this, is what is the problem we're solving? How does it actually benefit us in terms of bottom line? How is it decreasing the amount of time it takes to do something, grunt work issues? How does it make the business overall more scalable and make it so you can take on more people without having to bring on additional team members, i.e., higher productivity, which means that because you have higher productivity, you don't need as many people. So for example, if you're paying like a high-level copywriter, let's say 300 grand per year, let's say your business helps people grow and scale by getting more clients. Let's say that's the problem, that's the core of your business. Well, if you're paying a high-level copywriter, let's say 300 grand per year, and they can work with like 12 clients at a time, well, the thing is that their bandwidth for this 12 clients is their bandwidth. Well, if you can get some AI tools and systems and processes to actually kind of give it almost to those 12 people to where they feel more in control, they have a better, deeper understanding of the overall process they're learning or having to use for their business. One, it decreases the amount of time they're having to show up to this copywriter so that his load can go from 12 people to like, let's say 20. So you can get an additional 8 more people. And those 8 people get more results because they get on-time instant feedback. And so they don't need to be managed as hard, which means that they get overall better results. And the other thing too is like, who knows, you could license this specific like process that they're learning. And then that's like a recurring revenue source because now they learned your tools. So they have to be able to use it in like a year's time. So it makes your overall program and process more sticky, which means long-term, more money you make for yourself. So there's a lot of different ways you can really structure things, but it all again comes back to the key problems that it solves, or the key problems that the AI is designed to solve. And so if I had to wrap this all up with a little bow, basically AI is only as good as the problem it solves. And a misnomer, or a myth, I guess you could say, is you can slap ChatGPT on the front or back end of your business and it's going to be able to automate itself, which it can't. That's not what it's designed to do. It is very good at amplifying an existing system or an existing process. It's very good at being able to do that. And in some cases, it can create things from scratch. But if it is creating things from scratch, there still is going to need to be human oversight to confirm that what it's creating actually is what is needed to solve the core issue. So for example, if we go back to the CSM example, if we just use a typical automation and we have everything with if-then logic, if someone gives it something outside of the norm, well, then it's like, okay, well, what happened? It might give him a bad response, which because it's a dumb response without context, the student or whoever is just like, what the hell is this? That's going to increase chances of refund and chargeback and decreases chances of upsells, and decrease the overall satisfaction with the program and process they're going through. And so if you added an AI on top of that to that overall core thing, it'd be able to understand what is the previous like 10 messages of this interaction, and then what's a good formulaic response based on the outcomes you're trying to accomplish to actually be relevant for the conversation. And then, okay, so that's how that works. And then sometimes, that'll be good, sometimes it'll be bad. And then it can obviously, depending on how far you want to go with it, stack another AI on top of it to the point where it'll then audit it before the message is sent and be like, maybe not. Let's do 3-4 versions of what you're doing and then figure out which one's the best based on the context. As opposed to just a one-off message, it's like, hey, that was like a 4 out of 10. Let's get it to like an 8 or a 9 out of 10. And then once we get the message to a 9 out of 10, then we can send it. Stuff like that. So hopefully that makes sense. My biggest intention here is to demystify AI because it really isn't that challenging and it really isn't that hard. Where it becomes hard is when we're not playing in the real world, when we're talking more of like AI can or can't do something. Because in theory, AI can do, not going to say anything, but almost anything if you do enough prep work and planning, which is great. But okay, cool, Tommy, but how does that actually help my business? Well, if that is the lens we have to think through is like, okay, well, from a practical perspective, how can this help grow our business? Which then just comes back to, what is the core problem? Is this something that fits these 4 criteria? And if it does fit these 4 criteria, is it valuable to be able to actually implement? Which if it fits in one of these 4, it usually would be. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. And, if we're talking about trying to have an AI sales director, it's like, okay, I don't know if I want an AI doing that. But that's the thing. It all comes back to those core principles. And if you can use those principles, that'll give you a better idea of what can or cannot be done. And then if it can be done, is it worth being done? And if it's worth being done, okay, then it's like, okay, how do we make something to actually fix this problem? Because if you think through it like that, it actually becomes very simple. But from what I can see, there's a lot of people who are slapping AI onto the back end of some sort of existing program, or they're slapping AI onto a business and calling it AI when I think there was one guy I saw where is oh yeah, this is like a completely AI startup, but it actually was just a bunch of Indian programmers on the back end. I think he's going to jail now. but like that type of stuff. And so I'm like, okay, you as a person who maybe don't understand AI, how is this something that actually can fit for me? How can I make this practical? How can I make this real? And so that's my intention with this, is to, number one, demystify AI to make it very simple. Help businesses actually be able to grow and scale, whether it is with AI or something else. I'm not trying to pigeonhole myself into just being the AI guy. Although I can say that based on my background, I have a decent amount of exposure to it and understand a lot of what Alex talks about and what's actually important when it comes to scaling. And so that's my intention. Be able to provide value so that everybody's on the same page in terms of AI. Because at the end of the day, people will go with AI and they'll make a lot more money, or they won't, and then they'll get left behind. And I want to make sure that whatever is actually important to you in terms of your goals is what happens. So hopefully you found this helpful. In terms of like YouTube shit, obviously if you like this, like it, what I would ask is if there's any questions based on this as like a follow-up you'd like me to answer, I'm more than happy to do so. Or if you're like, hey, what about this specific scenario or that specific scenario? And then I might make a video on it or just answer in the comments. And if you have a team member or a friend who you feel like would find this helpful to clarify like how AI is now, share it with them. Because at the end of the day, I want to make sure everybody understands AI to a level that'll actually be helpful. And, that's ultimately what I feel makes sense. Now, if you want to actually work with me or with my team, don't know if it would make sense right now, but I think there's a link somewhere you can book a call to see if it is something that would make sense. It's not free. Don't know what it would be because everything we do is customized for people, at least at this point. Who knows, that might change. But on that note, thank you very much for watching this. If you need anything from me, please let me know. You can reach me on pretty much any social. It's the exact same, well, not the exact same handle, but I'll put my link somewhere so you can look me up too. So hopefully you found this helpful. Again, if you need anything from me, let me know. And on that note, I'll end it right here.